introduce our two speakers. Elaine Rabin and Chen He will be speaking to us. They are the program directors, Elaine for the emergency medicine residency on the east side, and Chen for the emergency medicine residency program on the west side. And they are the go-to point people for what determines the core faculty, or to be more specific, the ACGME residency core faculty. And what does that mean exactly? We've always had some rough idea about what it means to be core faculty, and we're trying to shore up the definitions and make it a little more clear to people what that means, what the goals and expectations are, and where the opportunities for growth, not only as it faces the residents and how we can increase our ability to educate the residents, but what that means for our own faculty development and our own growth as educators and along that promotions and tenure pathway along the clinician educator track. So keeping that sort of thing in mind, I'd like to start with Elaine, and then Chen, I think, will be along presently as well. Thank you so much for joining us, everyone, and thank you for our speakers.
Elaine, you're on mute.
Elaine, I think you might still be muted. And then Jacqueline, if you have the master control switch, you might be able to, oh, okay, great, thanks.
Yes, I'm unmuted now. I think Chen's muted. Well, thank you. Anyway, hi, I'm Elaine Rabin. For those I don't know, I'm the program director on the east side. Chen is also here, is the program director on the west side. Andy asked us to talk today about what it means to be core faculty, which I just wanted to kind of lay the groundwork for those who don't know people in the other departments, that we're all coming at this a little bit differently. I think with the Mount Sinai Beth Israel and the Mount Sinai Morningside West groups have for a while now had a pretty delineated who's core, what do core faculty do. Mount Sinai historically, like many of the big academic medical centers, has kind of folded what is usually done by core faculty into the general expectations of all academic faculty. However, as our residency has grown, and we're having to keep kind of closer tabs on organization and making sure that we have enough people to do different things and be a little more systematic about it. Brendan Carr, when he came, had suggested that we also go along with what's, I think, a growing trend to define more specifically who is core and what the expectations are. This seems to be something, so I actually put out on the CORD listserv, which is the Council of Residency Directors, all of the program directors listserv. I had put out a request saying, hey guys, we're starting to kind of define what we expect of core faculty. Does anybody have some criteria that they can send me? And I got a little bit from 3 or 4 people, but what I got many more of was requests to send out whatever I got, because everybody else is trying to do the same thing about now. So apparently this is sort of a general trend as well. So anyway, with that, I'm gonna hand it over to Chen, but I'll share my screen, Chen, is that right?
I can actually do it. Fingers crossed. I have a little bit of a technical hiccup in that my charger is intermittently working. So for now, I can just share my screen. All right. Can everybody see? Okay, great. So kind of as Elaine said, part of this talk was just to kind of demystify this idea of core faculty and to give everyone a little bit of a sense of kind of where it's coming from, where we're defining, faculty members and academic faculty members as quote unquote core to residency programs. As Elaine mentioned, on the west side, we have, kind of been more specific in defining core faculty versus other types of academic and administrative faculty within our department for a while now. So I just want to kind of go back to the basics and talk a little bit about kind of where this concept of core faculty comes from that we are always kind of referring to. And so it all comes from, you know, the ACGME program requirements for graduate medical education in emergency medicine. So there are common program requirements that apply to kind of all ACGME graduate medical education programs. And those are things like, you know, duty hours not exceeding 80 hours, you know, kind of basic requirements that you need in order to run any residency program. And then emergency medicine as a specialty also has specialty specific. Core faculty for emergency medicine is defined in the ACGME program requirements. And these are really, I kind of think of them as like the constitution for GME programs, where, you know, if you have questions about administrative issues related to running a residency program, this is kind of where you go to look that up. And this is where the idea of what a core faculty member comes from. And then every institution and program kind of further will define that depending on what their needs are as a program. And just keep in mind that, you know, for many of these programs that have been around for a long time, like Mount Sinai Hospital and, you know, Mount Sinai St. Luke's Roosevelt, now Morningside West, we're well established. And so, you know, we already have academic faculty, but these requirements also help programs that are kind of just starting out of the gate. And so, you know, kind of these requirements define things both for, you know, 100 residency programs that have been around for 25 years, but also, you know, like let's say 6 residents in a brand new program that's opening up. They want to make sure that each program is meeting kind of this minimum educational requirements so that we are all providing excellent training to emergency medicine residents across the country. So some definitions. So faculty refers to your entire teaching force as responsible for educating residents, right? Anytime you have a residency program or you have trainees, you need faculty members who are responsible for teaching, where on clinical shifts, they're going to do bedside teaching, they're going to evaluate residents kind of in real time. But to the running of a residency program, we also need faculty who are quote unquote core. And these are the people that are the base for making sure that the residency program is running successfully. So these are people who have a significant role in the education, supervision of residents, and they're devoting the majority of their professional time to the residency program itself. And so whether this is in resident education or administration, their work is primarily focused in teaching, evaluating, providing feedback to residents. And, you know, they kind of provided this guideline that these are faculty members who are devoting at least 15 hours a week to resident education administration specifically. And as a program director, I kind of look at that as, you know, faculty members who are giving me that amount of time to help me with kind of the running of the residency program in such a way where, you know, if I don't have this core faculty member, we would be missing a piece of what it takes for the residency program to be successful. But kind of keeping in mind that you are going to have other faculty members in an academic department who, you know, perhaps dedicate 15 or more hours per week to, you know, resident teaching or to other academic pursuits that are not necessarily focused on the residency program, who may not be defined as core. And so core faculty members are really critical to the success of resident education, and they support the program in developing, implementing, assessing curriculum, and also residents' progress towards the achievement of competency measures in order to successfully graduate from residency programs. And when we're looking at who are core faculty members, we're really selecting people who have a broad knowledge of and involvement in the residency program itself. And a couple of examples that I will give is, you know, there are people who are integral to the running of the department, but their time is not necessarily spent specifically on residency program related tasks. And, you know, just because you're a core faculty member 1 year, sometimes your role within the department may change. And so, you know, an example I'll give is we have, for example, medical directors who used to be core faculty because their work was really in, you know, helping to run an administrative rotation for the residency program or working on projects with residents. And now their role has kind of shifted more towards administrative tasks within the department. And so as a program director, they may not be core to me in the sense that they're making significant contributions to the residency program, but their work is obviously still important, both academically and operationally within the department. So how many core faculty members do we need? The truth is everybody could be a core faculty member, but ACGME defines a minimum. And so you need one core faculty physician for every 3 residents. So in our program, we have 60 residents and we define 20 core faculty members every year. The chair or chief of the department, the program director, and up to 3 APDs are required to be core faculty members because that is just what the basic necessity for running a residency program. And I say up to 3 because ACGME actually defines how many APDs you're required to have based on the size of your residency program. And so any residency program with 54 residents or greater, whether that's 60 or whether that's 100, requires at least 3 APDs. And so many larger programs do have more APDs, but as for ACGME, they are required to be 3 who are core faculty members. And so what does ACGME expect core faculty members to do? I kind of mentioned, they're really contributing to the running of, evaluation of, and maintenance of the residency program. So every single core faculty member needs to do the ACGME faculty survey, which comes out annually. And part of that is so that ACGME can, supervise and make sure that both residents filling out the resident survey and faculty members who serve as core faculty and have kind of this intimate knowledge of the residency program are in agreement that things are working, right? That we are all meeting the basic standards that ACGME has set to say that this is a successful, well-run residency program that is achieving competence for training their residents. And also kind of to varying extents, we also expect core faculty members to participate in significant amount of scholarly activity so that when we do our annual update, it's a reflection that the core faculty members are doing scholarly work. So we do report all, book chapters, national lectures, peer-reviewed publications, other, types of educational activity that all of our core faculty members participate in. Some core faculty members will sit on the clinical competency committee, which we have one for every class. And so they look at resident evaluations on a biannual basis, and they make recommendations in terms of how they feel that particular resident is meeting milestones. Not every core faculty member needs to sit on the CCC committee because we have 3 to 4 faculty members per class. So I don't need all 20 of my core faculty members to necessarily serve on the committee. They can kind of participate in other areas of engagement when it comes to the residency program. We also have an end of year program evaluation committee meeting as we are doing our annual updates to make sure we are kind of, up to snuff with all of the things, all the requirements that we need to be meeting on an annual basis. And so some of the core faculty, all the core faculty members are invited to participate in the committee and some attend the meeting. And then finally, a significant portion of how we educate our residents is conference didactics. And so ACGME actually spells out that every core faculty member needs to attend at least 20% of planned activities. And then I'll talk a little bit more about our departmental expectations later, but we actually have a minimum requirement of 25% of conferences. So 1 conference a month is what we require of our core faculty members. So some additional residency responsibilities that core faculty members will often participate in doing resident evaluations, generally more than other clinical faculty. We actually ask all our core faculty members to do milestone evaluations for 60 residents twice a year. Conference attendance, as I mentioned, participation in conference didactics, so giving lectures, being small group presenters, being simulation day facilitators, mock oral boards, retreat hosts. These are just some of the things that core faculty members can participate in. We expect them to be mentors to the residents, whether that's on research projects, or we actually have a formalized mentorship program where we assign residents to faculty members within the department when they start off as interns, and kind of at a minimum expect them to be meeting with their mentees twice a year. Teaching, and part of this is resident evaluations of faculty. We expect core faculty to have good evaluations by the residents in terms of how they are doing clinical teaching, and then as needed curriculum development. So for example, my core faculty members who are in the ultrasound division or the global health division, they're kind of specific areas of curriculum development that I'm looking for with them. So in summary, core faculty members are people who are integral to the residency program. They dedicate at least 15 hours per week to resident education and administration. They really are serving as a faculty backbone of the residency program. We expect that they have a broad knowledge of and involvement in the program so that they can kind of speak to the strengths and areas of improvement when it comes to annual updates and ACGME faculty surveys. And they're really the main source of support for the residency program in terms of education. So they come to conference, they participate in didactics, they serve as research mentors for our residents. And so what does this all mean to you, and how do we look at core faculty? At least on the West side, it's actually been very systematic in terms of, kind of looking at core faculty and their ability to meet expectations. And I would say that this kind of falls into 3 areas. Excellence in that they have a specific area of knowledge or interest where they can provide mentorship to residents. Engagement as defined by these minimum expectations for evaluations and conference attendance and participating in residency events. And then scholarship defined, specifically by scholarly activity, but also, we have started looking towards more ability to contribute to teaching methodology, as we have wanted more of our core faculty member to apply to IME, for example, and to kind of show the scholarship to justify membership. And I talked a little bit about this. So excellence, we really want to know for each core faculty member, what is their role within the residency program and what they're contributing in terms of, the success of the residents. And is this consistent with residency needs? So I kind of mentioned that sometimes that role changes. If we are bringing in a new fellowship, my need for core faculty members, in that division might be stronger than in the past where we had a fellowship in a different division. And, we want to make sure that our faculty members are kind of continuing to maintain their skills as defined by what they're an expert in and what they're bringing to the residency program. I talked a lot about attendance engagement already and how we define engagement and what we look for kind of at the end of year evaluations for core faculty members. And then scholarship, how are they advancing teaching and the science of teaching at the end of the day? Because that's the educational piece is the most important to the residency program. And so Eric and I actually, we'll sit down at the end of the year and we'll fill out a form that looks like this in terms of, core faculty participation in the program, and just to make sure that everyone's kind of meeting these minimum requirements that we've set. And that's it.
All right, and on the Sinai end, which we're obviously newer to this process, we have been putting together kind of a similar list of criteria. Again, because we're such a big program, we definitely don't need everybody interviewing every time we have interviews. In fact, we couldn't accommodate that. But we do want to make sure that certain things like helping out with small groups and conference and helping out with our remediation program and things like that, that we have enough people in each. So we developed what's a first try at a point system, which I was going to share, but I think I probably won't even bother sharing because I don't want people to get too bogged down in the details since we consider it a first attempt and a work in progress. We're coming up with fairly similar criteria. I should probably retrospectively apologize. When this all came up, it was in the midst of us preparing for our site visit. And there were certain things we had to get down well enough to have all of the ACGME paperwork in at the right time. So it happened a little bit haphazardly. And we've had discussions with some people about core, being core or not core, but not kind of broadly across the board as one big group. So at least for the Sinai people going forward, we're going to try and just make sure that everybody is on the same page with what the Sinai expectations are and who is interested and willing to join in and who doesn't want this to be part of their portfolio. But as with the West Side, we, of course, even if the people who are not counted as core faculty, first of all, it doesn't mean that we don't think that everybody contributes strongly in various different ways to the residency. And additionally, everybody is still academic faculty. So the expectations of evaluating residents and bedside teaching, all of those things come with being academic faculty. Those aren't necessarily connected to being core faculty. Although our expectations of the core faculty of filling out evaluations and things like that will be a little bit higher. And so I think that is kind of where we are now. And I think we can, I guess, open it up for discussion if it's something that people have questions about. We'll try to answer them. The answer might be we have to see how it goes from our side, but Chen might have more concrete answers. We're keeping an eye on the chat as well.
Everybody was automatically muted when they entered, so if you were trying to talk, you are more than likely on mute and you will have to turn that off.
So let me ask Elaine or Chen, at your sites, my guess is you'd have an annual review of core faculty performance and to determine whether someone stays core. Is there going to be kind of an evaluation to ensure involvement?
Yeah, so Eric and I do an annual evaluation of core faculty members. And sometimes, I mean, obviously we are looking for them to meet the expectations that we've, written out. But sometimes, people's role change. And, I kind of gave the example of one of our associate medical directors in the sense that he used to be much more residency focused, now is much more operationally focused. So even though he is academic faculty and making contributions to the department, from a residency director perspective, he's not as integral to the administration of the residency program as he was before. So he was actually moved out of a core faculty position so that we could kind of bring someone into that role who did a lot more work specific to the residency program.
Do you have a limited number of people who can be core? Is that a set fixed number?
I can take that. It is and it isn't. It kind of
You're not a residency director. You're not a residency director.
but I control the budget. It depends on a lot of things. It's hard to give a clear answer to that because it does depend on multiple things, and it's a combination. It is an hours thing, but it isn't an hours thing. But I think it really is, as both Elaine and Chen very clearly said, everyone who works here is expected to teach and to do it well, is expected to do evaluations. But as we do the core evals, which, Chen kind of runs, the focus is on, does this person have a unique role in the residency? And is their role in the residency consistent with the residency values, visions, and missions? They have to line up. So they may be doing something great, but it's not what the residency needs. And so in the yearly evaluation, and it's been iterative, we've gotten better every year. And now we have a whole written thing that some we send out, some we keep internal. But do they meet the criteria for just the metrics of evaluations, teaching, lectures, and then, what are they doing for scholarship? And if they're not, then that's a full discussion. And what are they doing for the program? And if what they're doing for the program helps them, but not the program, then they need to move it out of the program and do what they want to do, and then figure out, how they're going to do it. But it has to help the program because that's what the hours are there for.
I got it.
So to answer, right, and to kind of add to that, ACGME sets the minimum, and then ultimately it is dependent on departmental budgets.
And Brendan and I haven't worked out yet. We will certainly be providing him information with people's how they're contributing. We haven't worked out exactly how we would do the reviews, whether we would just give him the information for his regular semi-annual reviews, or whether we would participate as residency faculty in any way. I did, one thing I realized, I think Chen, ACGME has a very specific definition of scholarly activity, which Chen, unless I missed it, I don't think you actually put that definition up. Is that right?
Yes, I did not put it in specifically. Do you want to just go over that?
Yeah, I'm going to show it only because one of the requirements of core faculty as per the ACGME is to have some amount of scholarly activity, but it's not on the level of what generally what is expected for like a tenure track research kind of person. So this is it can include basically any of these. So it can include a textbook chapter, they include non-peer reviewed, including online publications, editorials, letters to the editor, committee leadership, things like that. So even a presentation at a local, national, regional meeting, all of those things count. So the one thing that I guess they point out that doesn't count is like if you're an ACLS instructor, that's not quite original enough. It has to be something sort of original. But that when you see the core faculty, which the ACGME has always mandated, when you see the scholarly activity requirement, this is what they're referring to.
Right. And I would say, you know, as program directors, we look to diversify our interests a bit in the sense that, you know, there are other questions on the ACGME resident survey. You know, do you participate in research? You know, do you do quality improvement? You know, what do you think about educational didactics, where we want core faculty members to kind of be representative of kind of the breadth of scholarly activity.
And to add to that for a moment, if I might, there's an enormous amount of overlap between what our academic and what previously people considered themselves to be core, even though we're restructuring the definitions a bit, what all our faculty are doing, because we're all, you know, pretty much everybody in our department is providing some great service to the department, is growing their career, is making the residency program more robust. So I want us to be thinking about this as we go along as, that this is a bit of faculty development also, and this is a bit of promotions as well. So as you go along, if your niche is a residency facing niche, and you're involved more in education, or you're involved in things that make you part of the residency core, I wouldn't like you to think about it as like checking the boxes, but by being involved in resident education, by writing up a didactic that you'd written about, by submitting some of the cases that you do in SIM to the CORD listserv, or you know, National Simulation Archives, or some of these other things. These are scholarly activities, and these are not only the kinds of things that we need you to be doing to enhance the residency, but these are also things that kind of grow your career. The book chapters, the manuscripts, and all this sort of stuff. So think about it all facing the same north of growing the education mission for you, for your career development, for the residents as well. And there's an efficiency in that. So it's not like extra work or more responsibilities. It's just making sure that the work that you're doing is already aligned to goals of the department and aligned to goals of the residency and the ACGME. And I would say for most people, your goals are already probably 90% aligned as it is. And some people are now going to think about like, well, I'm really more of a research person. I'm more of an admin person. But the folks that are on this clinician educator track, the folks that are already residency core, let's double down on that a little bit and think about what exactly that means to satisfy those requirements and to grow your own career.
Just to tag on to that, which is part of why at Sinai, and I realize the Sinai faculty, especially those of us who have been here for a while, this might be a more confusing concept than to others, but and the ACGME has always required core faculty for all residencies. We as residency leadership, when we were reporting to them, since much of what is expected of core has always been expected of all the faculty at Sinai, we were just reporting, you know, the scholarly activity and such in that way, and it wasn't so specific in a way that we had to bother you guys with the definitions. But as the residency has grown, it really, I think, has become necessary that for us to run it, to have more people more identified into roles. Yeah, that's all I have to say on that, I guess.
A couple of people asked me for slides, so I'll pass those on. And Andy, if you can get them distributed.
Yep, gladly. Do the two of you think that as we continue refining what and who is core, that there are people who are going to be surprised that they're no longer core? Do you anticipate that happening?
Well, I think my guess is that many people, at least at Sinai, where it's, in evolution, had never really thought about it because it wasn't really something we.
That's right. Oh, it's a big change.
Yeah, so I don't know. I guess I would ask that of the folks who have been here.
Okay.
I kind of have a question. So, so we have all these divisions, right? So there's the ultrasound division, there's pediatric emergency medicine, there's, I guess, tox, there's global health. So I've kind of thought of like different silos. And so I'm just wondering if certain divisions will be, I don't know how it's going to fall out. So, but I've thought I've had this unique position of being like ultrasound and PDM. So like maybe I'm going to be too niche-y to be a core faculty member after you make up these definitions. So,
but if you think about it, Jim, you're the last person who would, not that I should go there, but why not? You're the last person who would be concerned. You have an identified area of expertise. You're involved in quality. You're involved in teaching. You're involved in research. You're involved in, intimately involved in resident education. And so you are really fulfilling, I believe, not that I've reviewed things recently, but you're fulfilling what one would expect of core faculty.
Well, so that I think I haven't looked at Jim's statistics or Jim's information specifically, but I think that's a good example that that is true if he's been filling out enough evaluations and coming to enough conferences and helping out with remediation and things like that.
So you're right, and in fact, this is a real documentation, quantification of involvement. And when we were smaller, it wasn't as necessary because it was easier tracking and knowing things. But you're right, it's a whole different process now of tracking people's actual contribution.
To me, the question is really, right, like what is your contribution to the residency program? And just because you're core just because you're not core does not mean you don't have a significant academic position within the department.
Right.
And so I guess like kind of the example I give is, of people in operations. If you are an operations person who is like running the admin rotation, leading residents on the QI projects, like that is a core faculty member to the residency program. But if you're a medical director where, you're doing sepsis metrics and, operations solely, you're still vital to the department, but to the residency program, that's not your main role.
Well, there's another little piece of that, since you brought up the medical director situation or the concept that someone would have a significant administrative role. It might also be that that person's career path and their behind the scenes sort of budget funding, being tied to operations and admin, doesn't necessitate that they officially count as ACGME residency core faculty, and therefore, even though they're doing some teaching and some, evaluations and whatever, the same threshold for those evaluations, like the number of evaluations, their conference attendance, et cetera, isn't expected of them. So, again, that's one of the reasons why it's important that we start making these things a little more solid, so that we're not thinking about this retrospectively, like it's December. Did we check enough boxes for the ACGME? What did we do? No, everybody's going to know what role they play and what expectations they have as they go along. So we'll be able to provide on a regular basis, and whether that's quarterly or whatever, here's your conference attendance, here's how you're doing with evaluations. And as core faculty members, you're hitting these, expectations or you're not. I don't think anybody's really worried that any faculty member isn't like, teaching enough, or that they're not like, that they're not sort of in the esprit de corps of the education mission in general. But specifically being core residency faculty is going to have certain responsibilities associated with it that may be higher than what other people are doing. Just like being part of the research division or part of the administration arm of the department are all going to have some specific expectations, despite the fact that we all have some common ground that, we all get our charts done on time, whether you're an admin person or not. We're all, keeping an eye out for patients that get enrolled in studies and cooperating and making nice with our research associates, right? Because research is a mission of the department, whether you're funded or not, so there's some common ground there, but the higher expectations are going to be for the residency core faculty.
Right, exactly. We expect all of our faculty members who work clinical shifts to fill out evaluations for residents, but there are these requirements that are specific to core faculty where there's more accountability.
Can I ask maybe a stupid question? What is the benefit of being core faculty? I mean, if let's say I'm core research faculty. So what's the benefit of being core research faculty and core residency faculty?
So I can't speak to the research faculty specifically. Oh, Chen, actually, do you want to answer that first from the West Side?
So I think that's where it becomes tricky for people who, are like funded researchers, for example, because they are kind of like, that is what they're spending their time doing. Other than, I think it's hard to be core faculty for both, to be perfectly honest, because I think there is kind of a level of commitment that is required for both of those things.
And apparently the system, and this is definitely overall above my pay grade, but the system is apparently asking for closer accounting of people's non-clinical commitments. And so it's, everyone will have choices to make about where they want to put their efforts, or at least have to describe them more clearly. That's my understanding. So, being part of the core faculty community is one of the ways to address that.
So what it really boils down to, Ethan, is we all start with a certain number of clinical hours a year. And then those clinical hours come down. If you're core faculty, you get X number of clinical hours down. If you're funded, you'll get X number of clinical hours down. If you're a medical director, you get X number of clinical hours down. But if you're a medical director, you can, and not interviewing residents, not doing evaluations, not coming to conference, not mentoring directly, you can't get hours down for being core and hours down for being medical director. That's double dipping. And that's the old way of accounting, but the old way is not the future.
So Andy, am I allowed to speak?
Yeah, I shouldn't even be speaking, so I apologize.
I just want to make sure.
Yeah.
I've been a residency director for 20 years. I think it also, so if you ask about the benefit from a promotion standpoint, the reality is that many promotions committees have no idea what core means. It's not really a something that they say, oh, you're core, you're not core, you're going to get promoted because you're not. So it's not going to hurt you if you're not, and it doesn't necessarily help you if you are. What it does is, I think, put you on a career path as an educator. So at least it gives you the access, because you are going to have access to giving lectures, to going to lectures. It gives you the access to working with residents, and it gives you the expectations that you are supposed to be developing your career in an educational sense. And in some ways, hours are important, but it's not really, that's not what it's about. But it does give you hours to also develop as an educator, which are tough to find funding for outside of that. So I think it's a combination of where hours are a piece of it, but it really is, it puts you on a career track to develop as an educator in emergency medicine. And going to a promotion committee and saying you're core faculty, they don't care. Going to say, as part of a residency, I was instrumental in leading the whatever it is about the residency that you were defined as the leader of, and doing educational scholarship within that. That's what is important, and that's why it helps you.
Yeah, I don't always agree with what you have to say, but you articulated that so well. Yeah, that was great.
I've learned from you. Thank you.
All right, well, we've recorded this session. Jacqueline, please confirm that that's correct. And we'll archive it. It will be part of the library at CEMED on faculty development. And we'll do an update. We'll be updating all these topics as they come along. And so I thought this was very interesting. It's provocative. It makes us think about what we are. And it's a beginning of an ongoing discussion. I think next month's faculty development session is I think Eric Lagone is giving it, if I'm not correct. I could be wrong, but I think Eric and Adam Hill are doing it on finding a niche, which dovetails perfectly with this talk because.
No, I think that's me.
Huh?
But I don't know. I think it's me, but I don't know if that's next month or not. I have to look.
You're right. I only have 2 months.
We have one on disparities in April, and how disparities are impact our practice and the way we teach and educate and interact with each other. And I'm open for all kind of suggestions that people might have for the faculty development session, because it's every month we'll be doing different topics. It's a great way for us to all get together, hopefully in person one day soon. I got my second vaccine today, so I'm feeling healthier, I guess.